The United States has long been heralded as a beacon of democracy and innovation. Yet, as we move deeper into the 21st century, cracks in our federal system are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Paul Sappho, the renowned Stanford futurist, has warned of a 50% chance that the United States as we know it will not survive as a meaningful entity by mid-century. Sappho highlights the growing fractures in a nation struggling with polarization, climate inaction, and governmental gridlock, all of which may indicate just how close we are to his prediction coming true. Yet as these challenges mount, an intriguing possibility emerges: the rise of state coalitions and city-states as the engines of leadership and resilience. A possibility that is already taking shape in so-called blue states like California, Oregon, and Washington, along with Republican-led states like Texas and Florida, all of which have shown a remarkable capacity for independent governance. By withholding some federal taxes, these donor states, which contribute billions more in taxes than the federal funding they receive, could be a pivotal strategy for them to assert autonomy and address critical issues that the federal government doesn't. California, the fifth largest economy in the world and the largest donor state in the U.S., receives billions less in federal funding than the hundreds of billions in federal taxes it pays each year. Oregon and Washington also pay more in taxes than the funding they receive. Together, these three states alone form an economic powerhouse capable of funding their own priorities, from climate initiatives to infrastructure, without federal interference. Imagine a scenario where these donor states retain their surplus contributions, redirecting them toward programs and projects that align with their citizens' priorities. Climate change, for instance, has been a focal point for these states, with California leading the charge through cap-and-trade programs and renewable energy advancements. Freed from federal limitations, such a coalition could accelerate progress on green technology, disaster resilience, and carbon neutrality, issues critical to the survival of not just the United States, but the planet. Federal funding has traditionally been a lifeline for states, supporting everything from Medicare to disaster relief. Such dependency, however, comes with strings attached. Consider the recent examples of President Trump threatening to withhold federal aid to California unless state leaders adhere to his demands, the more general federal funding freeze he enacted then quickly rescinded, and his expressed desire to eliminate FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, along with cutting the budgets of or completely ending other federal agencies and programs. Such actions underscore the vulnerability of states reliant on federal support, particularly in times of crisis. A coalition of states retaining their federal tax contributions could flip this dynamic. By creating self-sustaining funding mechanisms, these states could ensure continuity of essential services while reducing their exposure to federal political whims. The transition would not be without challenges. Legal battles, economic retaliation, and logistical hurdles would all loom large. Yet, the potential benefits may far outweigh the risks. Withholding federal taxes is not simply about financial autonomy. It's about reimagining governance in an era of rapid change. Donor states are already hubs of innovation, cultural influence, and technological leadership. Silicon Valley's tech dominance, Seattle's global trade networks, and Portland's sustainability initiatives all illustrate the potential of regional leadership. In this case of the Cascadia Corridor, the unifying name that's already been given to this region. Moreover, a coalition of states could extend its influence beyond national borders. By forging direct partnerships with other nations or city-states, it could even participate in global trade agreements, climate pacts, and technology-sharing initiatives. Such alliances would position coalition states as key players on the world stage, independent of federal constraints. Critics might argue that withholding federal taxes would deepen national divisions, accelerating the fragmentation of the United States. However, the ethical imperative to act, particularly on existential threats like climate change, cannot be overstated. Federal dysfunction has left millions of Americans vulnerable to environmental disasters, economic inequality, and eroding civil liberties. The GOP has denied and ignored climate change for decades, yet President Trump is now blaming California itself for its unprecedented lack of water and number of fires such negligence has led to. Rather than being left to the whims of POTUS, states like California, Oregon, and Washington, with the resources and vision to lead, must step forward, not as secessionists, but as innovators. History shows us that progress often emerges from the margins. The Renaissance began in city-states like Florence and Venice, not centralized empires. Perhaps the future of America lies not in the nation's capital, but in the ingenuity and determination of its regions. As federal dysfunction deepens, the rise of state coalitions offers a hopeful alternative. By leveraging their economic power, technological leadership, and cultural influence, donor states like California, Oregon, and Washington can fill the void left by a faltering federal government. Withholding federal taxes may seem radical, but it is a logical step toward reclaiming agency and addressing the urgent challenges of our time. If Washington can't lead or won't lead, why shouldn't our states?